In the last episode, we started going over my 2023 comic book collecting goals. And in this episode, we're going to continue with that list, see how I did for the year, and start to look ahead to 2024. Welcome back, comic book fans. This is Rusty again with Collector Auctions. And first things first, Merry Christmas, everyone. This is Christmas Day. I hope you guys are enjoying your day already with your friends and family. And if you get a chance to watch the show, definitely check in the show at some point today. I don't know if I'm going to do a live broadcast at this point because I'm sure we're going to be doing family stuff right here at 10 a.m. here on Christmas morning. But if you stick around and you get a chance to watch the show, what we're going to do today is talk about the rest of my 2023 goals list. I'm going to finish up the list. If you watched my last episode, you know I went over the majority of what was on my list. Well, what was left was two big things. My X-Men run that I'm working on and the Spider-Man issues that I wanted to put on my list. These are the books I wanted in my collection first before we start adding things for 2024. And that's something else that we'll talk about is maybe we'll talk a little bit about 2024 and what to look ahead, because there's definitely some things on my list for this year that I did not get to. And I'm sure those are just going to transfer right over to that next list. And maybe we talk about some of the other things that might go on that list, but I may save that for another episode. But before we get into the books, definitely hit that like, slap the subscribe, and click on that notification bell so you guys don't miss out on any of my episodes that I put out each and every week, Mondays and Fridays at 10 a.m., including Christmas morning. So here we go, guys. Let's get into the books. All right, so up first is my Spider-Man books that I wanted to put onto my 2023 goals list. And there are a ton of great Spider-Man books that could have gone on this list. And obviously there are some big, giant, major grail type keys. A lot of those may be outside of my budget. A lot of them may not be on my radar right now. But what I did was I picked ones that meant something to me or ones that I really wanted to have in my collection first. Now, I've had a ton. I've collected Spider-Man most of my life, but I really didn't have a lot of the older back issues or higher grades on a lot of things. And I decided that let's start with a book. Let's start with books that I really love to put on this list to make my collection better. And what I did was, okay, first things first, you think about all the Spider-Man books that you've ever read. And what are some of the most beloved books that you think of? What's the ones that you think of first that mean something to me? And most of these did. But there was, if you watched my last video, you watched that I also was collecting runs of books, mini-series, or a run of books in the middle of a series that I was trying to get those 9.8s on. And that's part of it. It isn't just about having the raw book. It's also about getting them graded, and a lot of these graded. And in this first case, it's going to be graded 9.8s, just like I did with Batman Year One. Those 4 issues, Batman Dark Knight Returns. Those 4, I'm shooting for all of the issues of Marvel Comics Presents the Weapon X program with Barry Windsor Smith. So you can see I work on a lot of runs where I'm trying to get these 9.8s. Well, there's one run in Spider-Man in particular that I wanted to shoot for to get 9.8s on. And beloved series, one of my favorite artist teams and writers, the whole works. Just absolutely fantastic. And let me just show it to you. Guys, if you're fans of the channel, you know what I'm going to pull out here, because it's 6 issues that I'm shooting for to get a 9.8 on. What am I talking about? I'm talking about Kraven's Last Hunt. And it was 6 issues over the 3 Spider-Man titles. Now, this is 1987. I don't know if it went into 89. I think it went into 88 as well. But first issue here, Web of Spider-Man. This is I believe this is issue 31, right? Yeah, 31. This is part 1 of Kraven's Last Hunt. You've got Mike Zeck Goodness, John Beatty's on this, and that's actually Bob McLeod's on this. And, of course, I'm going to mispronounce this. How do you pronounce his last name? Is it DeMathis, J.M. DeMathis? He is one of the best writers I've ever seen, and probably very underrated, but this Kraven's Last Hunt is one of my favorite storylines of all time. And you've got these just great Mike Zeck covers and interiors and everything. And it ran across all 6 issues of Spider-Man. Or, I'm sorry, 3 different titles of Spider-Man. You've got Web of Spider-Man 31 and 32. And let me just show you. Literally, here's 2 of them right here, 9.8s. And there's issue 32. And you can see what beautiful covers we've got here. And it also ran across Amazing Spider-Man and Spectacular Spider-Man. So the goal was to get 9.8s of this. Now, back in 2022, I'd already started on this. And the goal this year was to try to complete this run. And I've done real good. The 2 Web of Spider-Mans you see here, right here, were out of my PC. I had good copies of both of those. But the other copies I have of Spider-Man, for example, and even the Spectacular Spider-Mans, I couldn't get anything on a couple of those. I was getting 9.6s when I was getting them graded, or I had signed versions of some of these that I wasn't going to get graded at all because they were signed on the inside, and I'm not going to get those graded even... and of course, I'd probably get those graded, obviously, by CBCS, since they can verify the signatures, of course. But both of my personal copies of Web of Spider-Man came back 9.8s. I was super happy about that. But then it's like, okay, let's start working on the other ones. Spider-Man. Amazing Spider-Man. 131. Excuse me. Let me get that right. 293 and 294. And I struggled at that a little bit. I was getting 9.6s, but then I was able to get, out of one of the books that I picked up at one of the Comic Cons, I found a really good copy of 293, and this right here came back to 9.8. So I'm halfway there to the goal. Beautiful cover here. Let me see if this is... Yeah, it's still... Is it McLeod? How do you pronounce his name? I never knew that. He's a great inker. Beautiful inks on this. Beautiful inks that he used to do on the New Mutants titles, and I think he actually penciled some of that too. I'm not too sure about that, but I never could remember how do you pronounce his name. So, just absolutely stunning artwork here. So I'm halfway to the goal, and I get back issue 294, the other really good Kraven cover here, and I'm getting a 9.6, and I'm telling you, that right there was a white elephant for me for most of 2023. Whenever I go to a show, I'm looking for copies. I cannot find a super clean copy. And I finally, I just broke down. Just like in the last episode, when I started talking about Fantastic Four 244, I finally just broke down and I bought it. I ended up buying a copy of this instead of continually buying copies of this and trying to send in the CGC. I said, screw it, let's just buy a copy of this and move on. And that's what I did. And finally, I got this in my collection. I've got a couple of 9.6s. I think I have one in the eBay store right now. But I finally bought this. So here we are. We are 2/3 of the way through. And what that leaves me now are the 2 Spectacular Spider-Mans for 2024. I am looking forward to getting issues 131 and 132 as 9.8s. I've got some raws in the collection. I'm going to have to go back and reevaluate that and probably get those into CGC at some point. And I will continue to look for good bargains on graded versions of these. The market's down right now. This is the opportunity to try to find some of these 9.8s at a much lower price. To be honest with you, in a case like this, it was cheaper for me to go ahead and just buy this outright instead of trying to continually buy what I thought were really good copies at comic book shows, at comic book shops. And this book has never been cheap. I've literally seen it over this last year. Prices go anywhere from $25 to $50, and I've even saw a dealer at Heroes Con who was trying to sell this for $250, a raw copy of this. And I'm like, I mean, the books are really nice, don't get me wrong, but are you kidding me? That's crazy. So it was just easier to just go ahead and buy the graded version of this. So I will look forward to 2 fronts on the 2 Spectacular Spider-Mans. I will look for graded versions that I think are really affordable, and I will take a look at the copies I currently have in the shop ready to be cleaned and pressed and see if any of them are really good candidates. Hopefully we'll wrap that up fairly early in the beginning of 2024, and then I can put a bow on this project for Kraven's Last Hunt with all four of them, or excuse me, all six of them as 9.8s. But I was super happy when I finally got this, so that was really nice. So, what other Spider-Mans? Can I ask that question? What other Spider-Mans should you have in your list? Now, I had tons of books. I mean, I had some Silver Age books, handfuls of here and there. I already had issues 15, was it 59, the first cover appearance of Mary Jane. I had 78, the first appearance of the Prowler. I was going to say the Puzzler. I'm like, who the hell's the Puzzler? I had a couple other issues in the Silver Age. I had a ton of books from the 70s and 80s on. In fact, I pretty much had a pretty much complete run all the way from probably around, I want to say around 200, 210 up close to the 8. Well, I would say probably close to probably in the 5 or the 600s, maybe in the 700s. I don't know. I can't say that I had every issue, but it was a pretty thorough run all the way through there. So I definitely had some key books and everything, but I didn't have a lot of the older books. And so I started looking at what books would I really want in my PC, and ones that were obtainable without a great expense. I mean, yeah, you're going to sit there and go Spider-Man 1, Amazing Fantasy 15, and some of those early single-digit ones and things like that. But I'll be honest with you, they were out of the price range right now. I wasn't even thinking about that. So I started making this list, and I slowly but surely over this year, I've made it a goal to try to get some of these, and that's what we did. And surprisingly enough, I've done pretty good. Let's just go down some of these. And early on, one of my favorite older Spider-Man books, it was a Steve Ditko one, and it's probably the classic Spider-Man. It probably exemplifies Spider-Man more than any other book ever did or ever has since. And it's this one right here. It is issue number 33. And you guys know the story of Spider-Man's trapped under all this debris. He's got the medicine that's going to help save Aunt May's life, and he finds it in himself to be able to overcome these circumstances and save Aunt May's life. And it's just a wonderful story, beautiful artwork, and it exemplifies everything what Spider-Man stands for. And I always wanted a really good copy of this. This is a really decent copy I got from Heritage Auctions. At some point we will get it in to be graded. I'm not too worried about what the grade ends up being. I wish I had kept the original bag. I'll have to go back and look and see what they graded this. But I would imagine this is probably in a... It's a very fine plus... No, not very fine plus. I'm sorry. A fine range. Somewhere in that fine, maybe a little bit less, maybe a little bit more range. I know the back is a little bit more tan than I would have liked, but very good copy of this right here. But yeah, I got this from Heritage Auctions. It's a very nice copy. And then I started going down more of those lists, and what older issues do I want? I had issue 64, which is my favorite Vulture cover, that beautiful kind of gray wash cityscape behind the two of them in white and gray, and that Vulture and Spider-Man popping off. In fact, I think I've got my copy of that. I actually had John Romita Sr. sign many years ago at the Baltimore Comic-Con. But what issues would I like? All this last year, a hot comic has been that first appearance of Kraven. Well, I always liked Kraven. Obviously, I just did the Kraven's Last Hunt, but I've got Kraven on the brain. That first issue with him, his first appearance, never really did it for me. But I'll tell you what did. It was this issue right here, number 47 of Spider-Man. Now, it is not a key comic, but it is one of my all-time favorite Spider-Man covers. Classic Romita cover where you got the white border, almost like the Medusa cover as well. And I just always liked this. And I just decided, I'm going to put this on my list. Well, this is almost complete. This is a Pence version from England. And I bought this because the condition on this, and I've actually got the label in the back here, it is a very fine plus on this. And I think there was a little bit of a discount because of being a pence version, but this is a really nice copy. And it doesn't bother me that it's not the American edition. It went out at the same time. And I can't wait to get this one into CGC at some point. And I have to do a nice Silver Age submission at some point, but real happy to have that one in the PC. All right, let's go down this list. We'll do some raws here, and I'll show you some other graded stuff in a second. So what other books were on that list? Well, classic, and it's because I had this as a kid. I bought it at a flea market. It was probably better than a reading copy, but I remember it was weird. It had some medical tape up around the price tag. But for less than $1, I ended up with this issue, and it's just one of the best covers by John Romita Sr. ever, and it's issue number 100. And I'd been looking for a decent copy of this ever since, and prices seemed like they've fluctuated on this up and down a lot. Well, I ended up buying this from my friends at the Eclectic Nerd at one of the local comic book shows, probably in Frederick, at the Comic-Con over in Frederick here sometime late this year. And I thought it was at a really decent price, and I think it was in a condition that I think is going to benefit from a clean and press. It's a very, very clean spine. There is some work over here. I'm going to have to definitely take a tack iron to this, and it definitely is going to need some cleaning and everything. But corners are fairly sharp. There's no dog ears in this black cover. And I think I'm going to come out pretty much ahead once I get this cleaned and pressed and clean it up just a little bit. So the other thing about this one is I don't own a lot of comic book shirts, but the one Spider-Man shirt that I own is actually a black t-shirt that has this image on there with all the characters, all of his supporting cast in the background in white. And I always love that shirt. You see me wear that occasionally on the channel. But I wanted to get a decent copy in the collection, and that's what I did right there. All right, now a recent pickup was one that came to me because I wasn't sure. I talked about this in a show that I went to here a couple months ago, and I had a choice. I could buy Batman Beyond #1, or I could buy this issue. And I put it to the test. That was an episode. Which one should I buy? In the end, I ended up buying both of them because I got a discount, a really good discount on that Batman Beyond #1 that left me just enough cash that with a little bit of a discount off of this price tag, I was able to pick up both books in the same day, and this one got this book back into my PC. In fact, it was one of the very first books I ever sent to CGC. Back before I was cleaning and pressing my own books, I sent this in to have it cleaned and pressed, and I think they did a decent job. I think if I'd had that book today, I think I could have done a better job at cleaning and pressing it, but it came back as a 9.0, and I eventually sold it for a pretty decent price last year. But I finally got another copy of 238, the first appearance of the Hobgoblin, back into my PC. It has the tattoos in it, and it's a really decent copy. And you may see the price tag up there, but I didn't pay close to that. I got a decent discount, not as much as I did off of that Batman Beyond. But like I said, with that discount, I was able to go ahead and buy this one as well. So that 238 got added back to the PC. And as you can see, I'm not worried about getting these graded necessarily as part of this goals list. The goal was to get these back into my PC, so goal met. But honestly, every one of these are going to get graded at some point. So that left me with just a couple of other ones that were still on the list. And let's just go through. And I finally got down to the graded ones. And this one right here, I'll tell you this. This issue was the very first Spider-Man comic book that I ever had as a kid. And loved that book. I still have it someplace in the PC. And in fact, I even got to see the original artwork at a show up in Philadelphia a few years ago, right before COVID. And I love this issue, and I always wanted to get a really good copy back in the collection, but you get just post-COVID over 2021 and into 2022 is still a really expensive book, graded. I mean, people are asking a lot of money for this, and I've paid a lot of money for some raws on this, but I've watched the price really come down, and that's what I did on this here. I ended up buying a graded version, 8.5 of this. Let me show it to you. It is issue 122, Death of the Green Goblin, 8.5, and that right there was the kind of the grade that I really wanted to get. I mean, yes, I'd love to have a much better grade, but it got me in with the prices the way they are right now. This was super affordable, and it met another goal of mine, which was a much more expensive. Well, I'll tell you this: I'd paid for a raw back earlier this year, much earlier this year, that I cleaned and pressed, and it came back. I was not happy with the grade. I ended up with a 6.5 on that copy. And I had that in the PC, and I took it with me down to Charlotte at Heroes Con back in June. And as part of a trade, I traded that book out for a pretty decent copy. I mean, actually, I bundled some of my books for a couple of their books, and I ended up with a pretty nice copy of Silver Surfer #3. And that was great because it was the first time I'd ever owned that. But it kind of, what it did for me was it got that book out of my PC. I wasn't happy with that 6.5. I'd had another raw sitting there. In fact, it's still in the shop ready to be cleaned and pressed. But when Heritage Auctions had this a few months ago as an 8.5, and guys, you know how I love Heritage Auctions. I think you can find a lot of books on there that go for below fair market value. I jumped on this and was able to add this back into the PC at a much better grade than what I had given up for that Silver Surfer #3. So that was kind of the story on this. But if you guys get a chance, I mean, you only have another couple weeks, I think, until the show ends. But down in Charlotte, I'm not sure where. It's right next to the convention center, but they've got an exhibit down there. It is the same one that I went to up in Philadelphia back in 2019, where they have a lot of the MCU props and costumes, along with a ton of Grail-type original artwork from Marvel Comics. And included in that, I'm pretty sure this is probably there too, because it was in Philadelphia, was the original art to this cover here. And it is one of the most spectacular things you'll ever want to see the fine detail on the original, which is, you're getting closer to that 11 by 17 size, give or take. And it's just, the detail is fantastic. And I remember trying to leave that show 3 different times, and I couldn't get out of the show. I couldn't leave. I literally got to the exit, and I told my wife, no, I got to go back and look at this again. And if I ever get a chance, I'll have to pull those photos up and show you guys just how beautiful some of that original artwork was. But if you guys get a chance, check out down in Charlotte. They've got this exhibit going on. I think it only goes to the end of the year, but double check me on that. All right. So that comes down to a couple more graded books right here. What else do I want to add that really are big books, but not so big that will break the bank? Well, I had already ordered or added 330 or issue 33 to the book, but what other early Spider-Mans do I really want? Yeah, again, we could go to the older issues, the single digits, in the books and the Ditko books and everything like that. But I thought about it, and 2 of the books that I really, really wanted were the original John Romita Sr. books, where he started on the books. I'm talking about issues 39, and you can see I got a nice 6.0 on that, and 40, and I've got a 7.0 on that, and that's pretty decent. And I was super happy to get these. I'm not too disappointed in this 6.0, even the 7.0. In fact, you could probably get these for a little bit cheaper than I paid for them at the time. I had toyed around with trying to get this up to, I'm sorry, this one up to at least a 7.0 so they'd be matching. But for the time being, I'm real happy to have both of these the way they are in the PC, just the way they are right now. So can't go wrong with this. This is, of course, the classic Peter Parker and Norman Osborn learn each other's secret identities. Now, that leaves me like doing pretty good here. I got some pretty good books here, but there's some still definitely some big books that I still want to add to this list. What else do I want? And giving a little bit away, but one of those big things on my list this year was trying to get a Hulk 181, a Giant Size X-Men #1, get that back into my PC after I sold it a couple years ago. And the third on the list was getting Spider-Man 129. And I almost made a deal for one back in, I want to say May, at the Hagerstown comic book show that was out there. And it just wasn't in the condition I really liked. I was going to pull the trigger, but I talked to a buddy of mine who's a dealer, and he says, don't do it. Don't do it. You can wait. You can find a better copy. And that's what I did. And not that long after that, I ended up going on one Instagram, I believe, I'm not sure which Instagram dealer I ended up going through, but they'd had on one of their listings photos, basically make an offer. I made an offer on this right here, and it was, at the time, it was the biggest purchase I'd ever made on a comic book, and I finally added issue 129 to the PC. And 5.0, yes, I'd like it to be up to at least a 6.0 and above. And what's sad about this is that you can buy this right now. The prices have continued to drop. Now, I got this around May, I want to say April, May. Prices have continued to drop a little bit more on this since then. So you can actually do what I paid for this. You could probably get a 6.0, 6.5 at this point. I've seen it on I cannot remember the dealer. I wish I could remember the Instagram dealer. If I think about it, I'll put it across the top here. But it's a real popular Instagram dealer that they'll set up and they'll actually sell comics, and then they will actually do live feeds at some of the stores and even at shows. They'll go to conventions and do a live feed right there where they'll do a claim sale, basically. God, I wish I could remember. It's late. I'm completely forgetting which one it was. But I'm still super happy to have added this first appearance of the Punisher to my PC. I can't believe it. I'm going to sit on this for a little while, and this is one of those that, yeah, I'll look to upgrade it at some point, but I'm not in a hurry at this point. And I've got a decent book here that if I look to trade for something else, I've got something that's worth some money. I can actually use this as trade fodder for something else down the road if I really want to, knowing that I could probably pick this up again in a slightly higher grade for what I paid for it before. So I thought I was pretty much done for the year, even though there were still a couple of Spider-Man things left on that list. And there was one, this last one. And to be honest with you, I put it on the list because it's just an absolute classic Spider-Man book. And for the most part during the year, I didn't address it. I was going to basically continue to look for a Raw book at some point. But the way I kept feeling, every time I go to a show and I saw a Raw, I always felt like the price was really high for an uncertain condition. And I finally did this. I got onto Comic Link one day, and it was just on a spur of the moment thing to see what was going on in Comic Link. And they had this copy plus a couple other lesser grades for sale. And I put in a bid, and I determined I could have gone to a, now I'll tell you what the grade is. It's a 7.5. I could have gone to a 6.0, I think, and maybe a 5.0, but the covers were really not as presentable as, they were much worse than I would have liked if I'd gotten those grades. I mean, that 5.0 on this one right here, this presents really well. It's a very nice cover. I mean, your damage is around the staples more than anything, but the cover itself, everything about this is fantastic. But the covers on those issues of this particular book on Comic Link, Wasn't interested in it, but the 7.5 looked fantastic. And I put in an offer. It's the biggest purchase I've ever made. And I definitely have something. I'm going to hold on to this for a while. But again, if there's something bigger down the road, I've got a big book here as a chip in the pile that maybe it's a piece of a trade for something even bigger someday. But let me show it to you because it is absolutely gorgeous. This is the last Spider-Man book from the 2023 goals list. In fact, I'm looking at the list. Yeah, there's only one other book on here, and I'll talk about that in a second. But this right here was pretty much the one I didn't think I was going to get. It is Spider-Man number 50, the first appearance of the Kingpin. The classic John Romita Sr. cover. Absolutely one of the best issues of all time. One of the best covers, most iconic Spider-Man covers of all time. And 7.5 is just an absolutely gorgeous book. So I couldn't be happier to have this in the PC. In fact, I think I'm happier to have this than I am that Spider-Man 129. I don't know. This one makes me happier. I know I spent a lot more money on this one. But I've got two really big chips if I want to cash those in someday on something even bigger. I'll hold on to these for a while and enjoy having them. But yeah, super glad about that. So that leaves me with the last thing was what book was on your list that you didn't get? And that was a better copy of Spider-Man 121 to go with that 122. I had, in that trade I talked about trading off to get that Silver Surfer number 3, I traded off my 121 that I had. It was a 5.0, and it was probably one of the biggest disappointments I ever had in cleaning and pressing that I've had here. I made a mistake, popped the staple. I took a book that I thought I could have at least gotten an 8.0 and took it all the way down to a 5. And or was it a 5.5? I can't remember at this point, but I was kicking myself that I damaged that book, and after putting a lot of money into it, actually. And I couldn't have been happier to trade that off with that other issue 122 I talked about to get that Silver Surfer. And I thought it was a good deal, especially now with the prices even coming down further. I look at the things that I traded over the last year, and the prices have just really continued to drop. So I feel like I got some decent value for what I've traded for this year. And anyway, that was the last thing on Spider-Man. But those are the books that I picked up out of my 2023 goals list for Spider-Man. I have not, obviously we're going to finish up the Kraven's Last Hunt books, and then we will start adding some other Spider-Man issues to the list. We'll have to do another episode on that at some point because this is just 2023. I do not have that 2024 list yet. All right, guys, so I'm going to change up things right here, and I realized how long I just spent talking about all these Spider-Man issues, and I realized that if I pull out those X-Men and talk about that part of this episode will be forever long. So we're going to audible, and we will do that in the next episode, and we'll talk about the X-Men and my John Byrne run on that, and see how I'm doing on that in the next episode. In the meantime, guys, let me know what you think about all the Spider-Man issues that I picked up, and you can do that by leaving me a comment in the comment section below. And if you guys are ever interested in any of the things that I have on my channel, definitely reach out to me at collectorauctions@yahoo.com or DM me on my Instagram account. You can currently check out what's in my eBay store or on my Shortbox page by clicking on the links in the description below. But that's it, guys. You guys have a Merry Christmas. Have a great day. Hope you get everything you want. If you get comic books, you got to let me know. I got to know what you get. So have a great day. Take care, and I will see you for the next episode when we talk about those X-Men books. And until then, remember, every comic has a story.